Good morning. We're here with Nic MacClanachan, who is a bit of a serial entrepreneur, and we're going to talk a little bit around things that hold people back from starting businesses, mistakes that have been made along the way, and perhaps just some tips and tricks for newbies that are sitting on the fence, paralyzed by fear. Hey, Nic, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm
Hey,
so
Tanya.
delighted to have you on the show. You've got so much to share. So how about we kick off with a little intro of who you are and how many businesses you have and how many you've started in the past, and give us the whole hoo-ha.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. My name's Nic. I'm 45 and I've got 3 kids and 3 businesses. I realized the other day when I was recording another podcast. So I've got 3 businesses. I've got Human Experience. It's a bespoke mystery shopping company. So we go in and we mystery shop the service, sales and compliance standards of our clients. So they might be retailers or gyms or hospitality establishments. And that business started about 5 years ago. It actually started by accident when I used to own another business called Human Tribe. I actually sold that business a couple of years ago. So I started that up and I had it for 7 years before I sold it. And that was all about human performance in business. And 2 clients actually said to me, hey, would you mystery shop? And for some reason I said yes. And now it's grown to what it is today. So yeah, that's Human Experience. And then my second business, which is how we know each other, is Accountability Circle. So I get a lot of joy and I have a great passion about supporting female business owners, as I know you do, Tanya. And so what I do with established business owners, we get together in groups of 8 and we meet monthly and we hold each other to account and hopefully raise the bar with our businesses, learn from each other, and connect. And yeah, it's a great business.
That's a bit of a launch pad from where Unicorn Club is, which is for those people sitting on the fence, not sort of being scared to take that first step or not knowing where to start. And then once they've done that and they've grown their business, they would go into an accountability circle, which I find absolutely invaluable in my business.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to have some Unicorn Club graduates. That would be amazing. And you know what? Am I allowed to swear on your podcast or your recording? We're all shit scared all of the time, pretty much. So, but it's just really nice to be with, 8 other women that really understand what it's like to run and own a business and to really be there for each other. I'm so lucky that I get to sit in that room with a number of groups every month, and I get inspired and my bar gets raised by facilitating those groups. So yeah, it's a great business. And then the third business, the third child, is actually a COVID baby. So it's an e-commerce business. It's called Dot on a Sock. So anyone out there who has more than one school-age child will understand the issue that I'm about to describe, which is basically finding and pairing your kids' socks. It's a first world problem, but it is a nightmare. So
you just stand there and hold them and try and size them, and they never match up.
They never match up, and you go back to the shops and you can't find what you bought before, so you've got the same anyway. So our socks have a color-coded dot system on the sole, so they're easy to find and simple to match. And yeah, that's Dot on a Sock. And I had wanted to do that business for about 7 years before I actually did it.
Makes it a bit of fun for the family as well, because you can get the kids involved. Find your dot.
Yeah, absolutely. Your kids can actually, sort the socks and find their own socks, which is great.
Cool.
Yeah. So they're the 3 businesses.
They're all very, very different businesses, and I'm sure along the way you have learned many, many lessons. And what Unicorn Club is about, the foundation or cornerstone of it is a 10-module course where we help new business owners to actually kickstart. So it's all the practical back-end stuff that needs to be done, ASIC, ATO, getting your first employee right, employment contracts, that kind of stuff, making sure that these young entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs are not paralyzed by all of that back end, and that they then get to focus on their passion. And then secondary to that is our community that will prop up and do sort of similar stuff to Accountability Circle, share stories, the raw, the real, the ugly, the tired, the long nights and days that go into these things, and learning on the job. So you must have, along your way, learned some very valuable lessons. Is there one in particular that you'd like to share with us?
So many. I think the realization that no one really knows what they're doing, and that's okay. You talk about, so often you're building the airplane as you're flying. And, whilst that's not ideal, that is often what startup is. So I think, that used to really stress me out a lot in the beginning. I'd want to have everything perfect before I moved ahead. And it's just not possible, I don't think, in a startup. Even if you had, huge backing and massive amounts of funding, it can never be perfect before you start. And actually, in a lot of ways, not knowing what you're doing, I think, means that you listen more and you learn more and you adjust, and you're listening to your market, and you actually create a better product or a better service than you would have had you just, tried to do it all perfect at the beginning. So I think my biggest learning is being easy, or being okay with it not being okay.
I think sometimes the more you know, the harder it is to make that start, because you become paralyzed by all the things that could potentially go wrong, instead of just taking that leap of faith and just going for it and learning as you go, failing as you go.
Stuff will go wrong.
Yeah,
it absolutely will go wrong. And I think if you expect that and you're ready to respond, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So along the way, we talk about things like how to pick a business name, and when you should be registering for GST, and what the thresholds are for employees going on, when you have to register for payroll tax and those kinds of things, which isn't, those are things that you learn on the go. Is there a particular thing that maybe has been really important and has saved your skin that you've learned along the way?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And those, I think it's really important what you're doing, because, a startup, being an entrepreneur sounds sexy and it's creative, and you think about logos and you think about market research and you think about building your website, but actually there's a lot of, kind of boring but super important business admin that you've got to be across. So I think it's great that you're doing this program, because to have one place to go to for that source of truth. And I actually think, starting up another, I'm not doing a fourth business. I think 3 is my max, but, like, you actually forget what you don't, because you do it once and you don't always remember, oh yeah, that's right, I need to do this and I need to do this.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think it's great that you've got this hub. When we were speaking about this, and you were talking about stuff ups, one thing that came to mind was insurance. So I've been in business now, I've worked out, for 16 years. So I was 29 when I started my first business, and it was a franchise. So I was in business with my brother and his wife, and we owned some Fernwood women's health clubs together, so franchise system. At our biggest, we had 3 clubs and we had 150 staff and contractors across the 3 sites. So it's a pretty big business. Anyway, so we had the right insurances, and we got busy, which is really easy to get busy once things start to take off. So at the time, we had 2 Fernwoods. We didn't have a third. We just had the 2. So they were under 2 different entities, 2 different companies. There was different shareholder arrangements. So I owned the majority share of one, and then the other one was a 50-50. Fine. Anyway, we decided to invest in a new service that was an offering that we could do from our franchisor, but we wanted to start a new company for it because it could be something that we could also operate outside of Fernwood. So we didn't want it to fall under the same entity. And also it was a 50-50 share within the company that was, I had 2/3 and they had 1/3. So we realized we needed a new company. So we did that. We set it all up. And we filled the roles from women that were already working for us within the club. We didn't hire externally. Everything seemed to be fine. But in the first week, one of our employees basically had a near miss accident that led to an injury. And all of a sudden, I freaked out because we hadn't organised workers' compensation insurance for the new entity. We had workers' comp insurance for the other two, but not the new entity. And I come from a background in human resources, and I'm like, how the hell did I miss this? And B, I know this could cost us tens of thousands of dollars. You know, the insurance maybe would have cost us $1,000 or $2,000 a year. And yeah, anyway, turns out she was covered because she was still actually technically employed under her old contract, and the duties of responsibility meant we were okay. Had it happened a week later, it would have been an issue. Had it been a new employee that I'd put on a new contract, then they wouldn't have been covered. So that she had a near miss that led to an injury, and she was off for a number of months. It was a back injury. And you were able to see under the insurance, I think all up, it was about a $35,000 claim. That's a lot of cash versus, paying an insurance premium for what was then going to be a pretty small business. That might have been a couple of grand.
And those, unfortunately, are lessons that you learn only after the fact. So it's really, really important. Like, so many businesses do not have insurance when they start because it's seen as a bit of a luxury. And when you need it, boy, it can cripple a business if you don't have the right insurance in place.
I think it's a really good point. And I think there's sometimes when you're in startup world, you have to pay for things that feel like it's almost like over investing at the beginning, but it's well worth it. So insurance is definitely one. And, go through an insurance broker, go to 2 or 3 and compare prices, because there is a lot there. There's, depending on your type of business, there's professional indemnity, public liability, workers' compensation. So there's quite a few. Tanya, I'm just checking, did I freeze up then, or is it working okay?
No,
it's working okay. So there's actually a fair bit of insurance, and it's hard to know what it is that you need. There's even more insurance you need if you're selling goods, like I am with my new e-commerce business that I learned about. So I found a really trusted, great insurance broker for my 3 businesses, and she gets to know me really well. Every year, we talk about what we need to do. In fact, I just recently, I had all 3 businesses trading under the one company. And so from the 1st of July, I actually want to change that. I want to separate the entities. And I had one of the first things I did was call my insurance broker and made sure everything was insured before the 1st of July, so that I knew that all my bases were covered. I will never make that mistake again. But it's so another example that's a little bit relevant to that, right? So my e-commerce business, Dot on a Sock, it's still very much in startup growth phase. It's not at the point where it's supporting itself. It's close to break even, and it's been about 9 months now.
Incredible. And just from a startup journey perspective, to have a business that's almost supporting itself after 9 months is really cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's super cool. But I also had an expectation that I wasn't going to make any money out of it for 2 years. Like, that's my expectation. I'm not going to draw a dividend from that business for 2 years. So I think being realistic.
That's realistic,
is pretty important. And anyway, so it's a pretty basic kind of business, right? We sell socks mostly in bundles of 5 pairs. We do sell single pairs as samples. There's 5 different sizes. There's 4 different colors. It's pretty basic. But very quickly, your inventory management can get out of control. And I have a virtual CFO, and she said to me, Nic, I think you might need to invest in an inventory management system. I know it might feel like it's too early, but I've seen it before where businesses leave it too late, where they're making a whole lot of money and it's a giant mess and it costs a whole lot more, and they've lost all this money through poor stock management anyway. And so I've done exactly that. I've overinvested in my inventory management that is all beautifully automated with Xero and Shopify, and I don't even have to think about it because I know that as we grow, that will be fine. So it's hard, but sometimes you've got to spend a little bit up front to get that quality to set you up for success. And insurance is a basic one, but that's another example.
I think start with the end in mind is a really good message for entrepreneurs. Do not skimp on your systems and processes in the beginning, because it comes back to bite you at a time where you're growing and your wheels are spinning, and you just don't have time to really, really look at that implementation. It kind of holds you back at that stage if you haven't thought it through right from the start. So I think that's fantastic advice.
Yeah. And look, I didn't do it from day one. We implemented that from the 1st of July. So we're sitting at about 7 months there, 8 months. Still early, still before it was ready. So there's that plane being built as we fly. But realistically, I probably didn't really need it for another 12. But it feels good now it's there. And when you have a good sales day, it's like, yes, the inventory management system is being paid for, and this is where we're headed so we can cope with the volume.
Awesome. So Nic, just to wrap up then, we know how difficult it is to actually take that first step and to put yourself out there. And sometimes it's almost a fear of embarrassment, or a fear of, who the hell am I to start a business? Who's going to listen to me, or who's going to buy my product? If you had advice for somebody, just like 10, 20 words to encapsulate it, or what would you say to that person that's sitting on an awesome idea, but they're just too afraid to put themselves out there?
Yeah. What's the worst that's going to happen? What's the word? Like, actually write down all of the worst things that could possibly happen, because actually when you do write them down, they're often not as bad as what you think they are. And yeah, you might fail, but I had a chance a few years back to go. It was a ridiculous opportunity. I went to Necker Island and we got to meet some amazing people, and we did spend some time with Richard Branson, and he was interviewed by one of us there. We were all female business owners, and he told us about all his failures. Like, he's had so many failures and been on the brink so many times, and he's not scared to fail. So I think write it all down, and if it doesn't scare you that much, and don't worry about what anyone else thinks, because there's a really good chance it could work. And if it doesn't, you'll learn a lot, and something else might become clear to you that you'd like to do next. But often when you write those fears down, they're not that scary.
It's really easy for people to say, oh, that's never going to work. Who's going to buy that? Have you tested the target market? Blah, blah, blah. But there'll be more people inspired by your trying and by putting yourself out there than there will be those naysayers. So yeah, I agree with you. Like, just go for it. And if it fails, you've learned something along the way, and you probably have another idea sitting in your background if you really are that entrepreneurial spirit. So yeah, absolutely. Just go for it.
Absolutely. Just go. And often the naysayers, it's more about how they're feeling, that they would never do it, that they would be too scared, and that's okay. Like, so yeah, definitely ignore the naysayers and just have a go. Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us today and for sharing your tips. I think everybody's super privileged to have heard from you, given the amount of businesses you've started and the amount of success you've had. And it's just been lovely chatting to you. So thanks for taking the time, Nic.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, Tanya.